Hi everyone, welcome. My name is Gené Teare, and I'm head of content at Crunchbase. And it's great to be here with Jess, who is a partner at Sequoia Capital. So to kick off, Jess and I met fairly recently at the Grace Hopper Conference. It's a conference that has around 15,000 female engineers who attend the conference. And at that conference, we presented from Crunchbase's side the Women in Venture report. I do a lot of reporting off of the Crunchbase data set, looking at female founder trends and also looking at the women in venture side of the table. And what we found is the very first report we ran about 2 years ago, and when you looked at the top 100 firms, about 7% of investing partners are women for the top 100. We redid the study 18 months later, which was last October for Grace Hopper, and the number had shifted 1%. So Jess is a part of that stat because Jess had joined within that time frame. So what I'd love to know from you, Jess, is you're the first female investing partner at Sequoia Capital. This is a firm that was founded more than 40 years ago in the 70s. There have been female investing partners for Sequoia in China. There have been women on the team who are not investing who are partners on the team. So does this feel significant? For us in the industry, it feels significant. Sequoia is one of the most storied firms for them to finally have a female investing partner on the US team.
Yes, it does feel significant. It's interesting. I've never had a job before where I felt like so many people were rooting for me to succeed. Like I feel like when I was a founder, when I was working on Polyvore, the only people who cared were maybe my mom and our employees and our investors. But it's been really amazing to feel both the challenge and the burden, as well as the incredible support from people throughout the ecosystem who want to see women flourish in venture, and in particular at Sequoia. So that's actually felt kind of amazing.
And has that been true? When I look at venture and I look at the industry, you often feel like it's an industry, when you read some of the stories, people are butting elbows, people are type A, they're aggressive, they're out there, they're looking for the startups. Is that support something that Sequoia gives you within the firm? I feel like there's a very strong mentorship and a strong support system within the Sequoia firm, which is part of its success. So has that been your experience?
Yeah, that's definitely been my experience. I think, when I was thinking about whether to go into venture at all, as well as whether, what firm might make the most sense, part of what I was looking for is what I always look for through any career decision, which is the opportunity to learn and make an impact, as well as just go where the great people are who are really awesome that you want to learn from. And that's why Sequoia jumped out to me. I thought, if I'm going to learn the art of venture capital, I'd like to learn it from some of the best people in the industry. And Sequoia's had tremendous returns consistently over its decades of existence, which is pretty phenomenal. And that's through generational transfer of leadership, right? It hasn't been one person in charge the whole time. So there's something special there. Maybe it's culture, maybe it's the team, maybe it's the way, it's the art or the knowledge, I don't know, but it's getting passed down from generation to generation. So that was something I was looking for. And now that I've been there for a little over a year, I can definitely say it is the culture and it is a special sauce.
What is it about the culture?
Yeah, so it's interesting. If you look at maybe what Don Valentine did when he started the firm 45 years ago, he called it Sequoia, which is a tree that lasts forever, not Don Valentine Capital. And so I think from the very beginning there was this idea that this firm would exist for a long time and go on. The other thing he did was he made the choice of LPs. So the majority of Sequoia's LPs are actually foundations and endowments. So you kind of get this sense of like, yes, we're capitalists and we're looking for returns, but those returns actually go back and pay for like college tuition, which is unusual, and it is actually something that gets talked about. I think one of the public stocks that from our portfolio fell a little bit. I remember Ruloff came and he was like, that was worth about, 20 scholarships at Stanford. He just actually said that, right? So it really does make a difference to feel a little bit more of this mission as you do your work. And then the third thing is definitely the generational transfer, right? At some point, Don Valentine said to Michael Moritz and Doug Leone, here are the keys to the kingdom, like you run it now, I am stepping back. And that's happened multiple times at Sequoia. And there's a huge focus on it being an apprenticeship and a team sport. It's all about teaching and learning. So I've had the privilege of shadowing a lot of the other partners at board meetings that, you know, are 7 years further along than I would be if I started investing now, right? To see that interaction, to get invited, it was just, there's shadowing, there's one-on-ones every week. Like, it feels like the way you would run, it certainly feels like the way that I ran my company, trying to think, as a founder, trying to think about how to grow and empower the employees at Polyvore, right? So that same mentality, I think, and culture is part of why Sequoia has stayed successful.
So one of the things that you've done is you are pushing for change within venture, and you founded, along with a number of other female GPs, female founder office hours. So do you want to tell us what that is and how that's been? I think it's a fairly new project.
Yeah. So going back to the theme of feeling supported in venture, there's not that many women partners in venture. I think according to your study, I think it was the top 100 firms, there's maybe 34, I think, was that the right number? Female partners?
Yeah, it's a little higher. I think it's around 50 something. Yeah.
But that's actually a small enough number of women to fit in a conference room, right? Or it's like much smaller than this auditorium. So it's actually, you know, although that's sad that there's not that many, you know, maybe the upside is that we can get together pretty easily, right, and arrange that. So that's part of what happened. I think in maybe July of last year, Aileen Lee threw a dinner. She was one of the first, I think the first female partner at Kleiner, and then started her own firm, Cowboy, and is very active in seed. She pulled together a dinner of just with women partners, and from there we started talking about what can we do, you know, to help with women in tech. And I had an idea for quite a while of like, hey, I would like to do this female founder office hours thing, because when I was a female founder trying to raise money for a company targeted at women, I ran into the problem of, you know, the 93% of venture capitalists are male, and to tell them like, hey, imagine this app where you can shop all day long, it's really amazing. A lot of them were like, whoa, that sounds terrible. Why would I want that? So I thought, hey, what can we do to offer support, right? Whether it's almost like a support group, because it's lonely being a founder, right? It's even lonelier when you look around and you don't see anyone who looks like you. So support group, mentoring network, like how can generations of female founders who are a little bit further, like pay it forward to the next generation. And then third, access to friendly VCs who are going to give you advice, right? Advice and tips, not like in a pitch meeting, which is very high stress. So we said, hey, let's try this out. I got 10 women to sign up, 10 VCs signed up on the spot, and we put together our first event, sort of our MVP event, if you will, in November of last year. And then since then, it's grown. We've have 5 events planned from the beginning of the year till April, and probably more coming in New York.
And it's New York,
New York, 2 more in San Francisco, LA, Boston. We're talking about Seattle, but it's been really amazing to see the flood of support from other female partners as well as male partners, and to just see these gatherings of 100 women founders getting together and helping each other actually solve problems, as well as getting access to the sort of the inside baseball on how to pitch, because I found that very mysterious when I was a founder, and there weren't a lot of people to talk to about it besides other founders and then potentially other investors, but then I was always scared of the investors. So yeah.
Okay. Well, I want to go back a little bit to your founder story, because you studied computer science at Stanford in, I think, early 2000s. So what was the experience like studying computer science then? Because we often hear how inhospitable those environments were to women. Was that your experience?
There were very few of us. I think the year after I graduated, the CS department T-shirt was like 6 stick figures of dudes and 1 stick figure of a woman, and that was just like statistically accurate. So I remember being one of very few women in computer science. But you know, I remember.
So was that hard?
Yeah, it was hard, but at the same time, we were very just focused on the work and the projects. And I had my little group of other people in CS, and my project partners were always, there was another woman who was far better than me in computer science, and then a guy. And I think because we were together, the 2 of us women, like I didn't feel like I didn't belong as much. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. And that was, so you graduated around 2004. So do you think going forward to the department today, do you think it's changed for women, or do you think we're sort of in the same boat, 10 years on?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely moving in the right direction. I think the numbers are up. We still have a long way to go, though.
Okay. You then joined Google, and what was interesting to me is you joined on the product side, you didn't, join on the engineering side.
Yeah.
So why did you join Google? Why the product side? What were you looking to do?
Yeah.
And I look at your career, and I think Google must have been a fundamental stepping stone for you.
Yeah, for sure.
correct?
That's absolutely correct. I was going to be an engineer. I mean, I killed myself at Stanford, pulling all-nighters, trying to get this computer science degree. And I was all set to become, I actually signed an offer to be an engineer at Intuit, and I had my life planned out. And then I got contacted by the recruiters at Google. They told me about this thing called a product manager, which I'd never heard of before. And I just remember, as I went through all those interviews with all the different PMs in the group, I just kept thinking, wow, these people are really smart and amazing, and I feel like I could learn from them. Now I'm getting a little bit torn. What do I do? And I remember I was very, very confused. And I actually spoke to one of my interviewers about it. It was Marissa Mayer, who started the Associate Product Manager program at Google. And I said, what do I do? I don't know if I want this job. Like, I was supposed to be an engineer, which maybe isn't the best thing to say in an interview. But she was very kind, and she said, when I look back on all my choices, where I had to pick between some difficult challenges, I always tried to pick the one that was the more challenging path, the one where I would grow and learn the most. And maybe that would be my advice to you. So I really thought about it, and I thought, well, okay, if that's true, then I should probably take this PM thing that I've never heard of, and at least all these smart people will be there that I can learn from. And if I fail, at least I'll have learned and grown in some way. And that piece of advice has stayed with me throughout the years in pretty much every career decision, where I'm pretty much always signing up to do something that I don't know how to do, and I'm not sure if I'll figure it out. But as long as you have great people around you to help, like that often ends up being a good choice.
And then you did a crazy thing. You joined a 2-person startup, Polyvore. Three-person startup, Polyvore. And you joined because initially, your story is interesting how you joined is you liked the product, you were giving feedback or criticism, and then somehow from that you jumped, why did you make that move? That seems like not a great choice.
Yeah, my parents were not happy with me leaving Google. But what happened was Polyvore was started by 3 ex-Yahoo engineers who came up with this idea for people to mix and match products to create outfits and art, and it was all kinds of different things being created by the Polyvore user community. And I was one of those users. And I really loved the product, so I wrote in to complain about it because I'm a PM, and I had some, complaints and productive suggestions. And then they wrote back and they said, hey, why don't you just come work here and fix all this stuff yourself? So I thought about it, and I remember thinking, wow, this might be really crazy, but how rare is it to find a product that you absolutely love at that early of a stage where you can make an impact? And again, I was going through all sorts of oh, should I do this or not? And I decided to do it, and I remember I had a conversation with Jonathan Rosenberg, the VP of product at Google, and he said, I don't know what this thing is that you're going to, but don't worry, you can always come back. And I was like, oh, you're right, Google hires 100 people a day. Maybe they would take me back. And that sort of freed my mind to realize when those once in a lifetime opportunities come along, you should take them. You should bias towards that. Because sometimes the other path you can actually go back to, right? So I did it, and I started, and I was the first PM, and I started to code and fix all the things that I had been complaining about. And then we just kept growing and growing from there. And eventually, fast forward, at some point, the founders came to me and they said, we've always thought of you as a founder, and you've always acted like one. So we are going to start calling you a founder, and we're going to give you some of our shares, and you're going to be a founder going forward. And I was like, oh my God, you can do that? And that's just one of the most generous things that anyone's ever done. And it's very, very unusual in Silicon Valley. And,
how far in was that? Was that a couple of years?
I think it was a couple of years in.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's always meant the world to me. And I really believe you have to pay it forward as well, right? You just do, it's such an incredible gift, yeah.
So you spent 8 years at Polyvore. You became the CEO. You got the founder status. You obviously busted your gut for the company from everything that I've seen. And you eventually sold, I think it was to Yahoo, for $200 million in 2016, and the company had raised $22 million. So by all counts, that's an incredible exit. But you've said that you didn't feel good about that exit at the time. but have come to sort of reassess that over since then. So why didn't you feel good?
Well, it's funny. I think there's this thing that we do in Silicon Valley, the myth of like everyone needs to IPO and create a $1 billion company, and if you haven't, you're a failure. And I remember I was watching an episode of Silicon Valley as I was negotiating this transaction, and some guy walks in and talks to the main character. And it's like, oh man, I was such a hot company that I sold for like $200 million. And I remember I was like, oh my God, that's me right now. It's crazy. But it really is kind of a myth, because the truth is starting a company is so hard. And it's almost irrational to do it, right? The odds of success. And I've seen the odds. Now I've seen on the other side of the table, like what the Sequoia portfolio looks like. And that's one of the best portfolios of all time. Just the odds of you being that, $1 billion outcome, the odds are really low. And most companies just run out of money or lose steam or don't make it. And so there's this myth that you have to be the one. But at the end of the day, some companies are better off as business units inside of another company. Some are better as lifestyle companies. And it really, all that matters is whether you have made the impact in the world that you care about and whether you've taken care of your team. And it's so weird now to be on the other side of that and have gone through all those gyrations and feeling that way. But I do remember I was very, very scared when it happened, to the point where I wasn't really sure how my team would react, right? I'd been working on this transaction for 9 months. It was like having a second secret life that I couldn't tell them about. And we ran a very transparent culture. So to hide my whereabouts and what I was doing and pretend to be sick when I was flying to New York for an M&A meeting was just a major, major tax. And then at the end, I wasn't sure how they would react. I felt like, oh no, maybe they all expected to be
And how
every
big was
single
the company
person.
At this stage?
It was 125
Okay,
people.
so a big company. Yes, for startup.
Yeah, and I thought they would all be mad. I wasn't sure if I was going to get booed. So the night before, we printed out all these packets with what the acquisition would be worth to each person. And I hand wrote notes on all of them because I was so worried people would be mad. I was like, maybe if I do this little gesture, it'll mean something and people will know how hard we worked on this and that it's all okay. And then when I told the team, and it was just there's a whole other story behind that day. It was really crazy. But when I told them, I remember people started cheering. And then I just started crying because I was so surprised and overwhelmed. And it was just such a crazy 7.5 year journey at that point, and then another 1.5 years at Yahoo. I mean, it was just, there's nothing else like it, right? It's crazy. But yeah, it took me a long time to realize that it actually was a great outcome. And I'm very, very proud of the team that we built.
And did the investors feel it was a good outcome?
Yeah.
So across the board. And it sounds like being a founder, I'd love to understand, what does it take to be a successful founder versus a successful VC now that you're on the other side of the table? And, from what you talk about when you were a founder, that it sounds like it was incredibly hard. I don't know if you were on your own battling a lot of things as a founder, but I'd love to know, your advice for founders. What does it take? And then on the VC side, what does it take to be a strong VC?
So I think there's one trait that's important regardless of what job you do, but is very consistent with founders and with VCs, and that's actually grit. On the founder side, your identity becomes interwoven with the company's identity, right? It's such a big part. It consumes so much of your brain power, your cycles, your personal life gets consumed. You have to be, and then every bump in the road with a company, some of which is completely out of your control. It could be that Google dropped your SEO. That happened to us, right? It could be that the market crashes. You just can't control half of it, but you feel every single bump in the road. And to be able to get through all that pain and keep going and keep getting up after you've been knocked down, I think it requires a lot of grit. On the VC side, the interesting thing is it's not that same existential feeling of I am the company, because your fortune is spread out across maybe a portfolio of companies. But the weird thing is you don't control what goes on at any of those companies in any serious way. You have a lot of influence on the founders and you have a board seat and you can shape things, but at the end of the day it's up to the founders, right? And so the hard part is managing your psychology around not knowing if you're good at your job for like 7 years. Every day at Polyvore, I knew, okay, today I did well or I didn't do well and the company's moving in the right direction. But because startups, as a VC, I feel like you're measured in large part by your returns, but you're not going to know what your returns are for the 7 to 10 years that it takes to build a very successful company. So just that, and markups don't count because valuation, in my opinion, because valuation is just funny VC math, in my opinion. Like, it just really is. So, just being able to keep going when you're not sure, and all you do know is you get the data points on which companies have not survived. So which ones have like shut down sooner than you know which ones are gonna be great. So I think that requires its own sort of grit. Just, I think most overachievers or smart people are used to like feeling like they're doing a good job. And in this job, I'm like, I don't know. I'll ask me in 7 years.
Sure.
So that's interesting.
Yeah, and you said you've done, since you've joined, it's been over a year now, you've done around 2 deals, I think, and you obviously help with more portfolio companies.
Yeah.
So also your odds are, they're sparse, know, it's 2 deals.
Right.
That which means you're spending a lot of time, as we all know, saying no to people. So that's also must give you shivers, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to open it up to the floor because we have a few more minutes, but I have one final question, which is, how did Sequoia find you? So what was the process? Did you apply? Did you put your name in a hat? Did they approach you? Like, what was the process for joining a firm like Sequoia?
I think it takes a long time, to find a partner, and I think every firm does it differently. But I spoke at a conference at a Goldman Sachs conference, like maybe I think in 2013 potentially. No, might earlier than that. May have been 2010. And I spoke, and nobody came to my session because I think maybe Snapchat was in the other room, and so everyone went to that session instead. Except for I think one of the partners at Sequoia, for some reason, came to my presentation and then talked to me afterwards. And then a few years later, he reached out again and was like, and this was Roelof Botha. And I remember I was like, oh, Sequoia reached out. Maybe they want to invest in Polyvore. Oh my God, I was really excited. And then we had lunch and he was like, maybe you should leave your company and become a venture capitalist. I was like, this is the worst lunch ever. And I was like, I don't want to be a VC. I'm a builder. Why would I do that, right? And I was like politely like, oh, thanks that was very kind of you. Ooh, what? I just left. But then after the company wound down, they reached out again, and I had just joined Yahoo at that point. So I was like, look, I can't, but I'd love to spend a day. They offered you, hey, do you want to just spend a day with us and see what it's like to be a venture capitalist? And I was like, free day at Sequoia, sure. So I went over, and that's when I first saw what it might be like to be on the other side of the table. And to hear founders pitch their dreams and their hopes and their ambitions every single day is such a privilege. And then I remember I got into a bunch of fights with the other partners that day because I didn't agree with them on some of the decisions. And in hindsight, I was clearly wrong, but I think just that camaraderie and experiencing what the team might be like helped. And then, I couldn't do anything at that time because I made a commitment to Yahoo, and I didn't feel like, I could just leave my team after 2 months after joining. And then fast forward a year, Yahoo was going to be part of AOL, and I decided that's not what I wanted to do. So I went back, and eventually so it was quite a long history with the firm. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yes, I want to open it. Over there.
Hi.
Hi, how are you? My name is Chenzi, and I'm the founder of Fitnessphere. So we are a marketplace for artists, and right now we have 20,000 users, and we have more than 500 listings. With one simple click, you can book the artist which you love. And I am, right now we want to expand the team. I wanted to know how to involve with your future events, because I really wanted to learn from other female entrepreneurs. Like, I totally understand, like in the beginning you said it's so lonely and all those hassles. I really wanted to what's the process to be a part of the events in the future?
Yeah,
Thanks.
so just go to femalefounder.org. I bought that domain in September. Can you believe nobody owned that domain? That was still available. I bought it, and we have a sign-up form there for just anyone who's interested, who's a female founder, to sign up for one of the events. There's one happening February 22nd, so very soon. So just sign up there, and we try to match people to the VCs they want to talk to. But even if you don't get matched, it's still worthwhile to come because you get to meet 100 other female founders who are working on their own brilliant ideas, and you can build that support network. Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Raja Weiss. I'm the creator of Spot Idol, and it's a platform where idols and people grow, have fun, and profit. Our mission is to build up as many idols as fast and as high as possible. And both you and your organizations are idols. And me and many people here and in the world, thank you for that. I have one question for both of you. So for Gené, my question is, of the top VCs, the top VC partners, top 10 maybe, what % of the partners are black?
Good question. I don't know that number, but I will say we just printed on Crunchbase a list of black men in VC and black women in VC. They weren't lists we created. It was people who were out there in the industry who wanted to know the stuff. So we do have the list. But I think in the top, very slim. But I don't have the number to hand.
Okay, and my question for you, Jess, is at what point do you feel absolutely certain that you will invest in a company?
Oh, that's a good question. You know, you have to have a certain level of conviction. So it varies. So far, it has varied. You know, maybe the way that we always break it down is we're looking for daring founders who can go the distance, because it's a long distance, it's a long marathon, in a very large market, right? And I think that's the thing that, as a founder, I never thought enough about, was the market side, right? Like, I was trained as a PM, so I thought about what's the problem, what's the solution, and I would think about product market fit. And then I didn't think enough about, is this market a good market to go after? So I actually that's one of the biggest things I've learned at Sequoia over the last year, is how to analyze markets, look at the competitive landscape, and see, not is this solution a good solution for this problem, it's is this problem a big enough problem worth solving? So that's a part of the equation. But for me, I tend to look for people who have gone, like, there's this metric that I think about called distance traveled, right? Like, what's your distance traveled, right? And do you have a high slope? Are you able to learn quickly on the job? Because there's, like I said, constantly being asked to do things you've never done before, and then picking yourself up when you failed, and then keep going on. So those are some of the things I most look for. Does that answer your question?
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Thank you to
Thank
Jess
you,
Lee.
guys.
That was great.